So, welcome everyone to our Talkroom series of podcasts, Being Your Best Self. And for those that haven't seen any of our previous podcasts, I'd like to introduce my co-presenter, Wendy. Wendy is a highly experienced CBT psychotherapist and has been working in the field of mental health and well-being for well over 30 years. So an absolute pleasure to be here again with you, Wendy.
Thank you, Ian, and also an absolute pleasure with you as well. And for those who don't know Ian, Ian, you are an accredited counsellor with the British Association of Counsellors and Psychotherapists, and also the founder of Hope Therapy and Counselling Services, which is a counselling practice that operates throughout the south of England.
Thank you, Wendy. So these podcasts will look at the question of how to be our best selves. We do that by looking at the question of mental health and well-being, but we also try to make it relevant to the times that we live in as well. And today we're going to be talking about the really important area of depression, what the common causes of depression, what are the strategies that we can use to support people to help them to cope if they are struggling in that way. So, Wendy, tell us just a little bit about what is depression and maybe some of the factors that we might associate with depression as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ian, and most certainly. So to start with, depression is known as a very common mental health problem, and it's characterized by persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and usually a lack of interest or pleasure in activities that were once enjoyable. It can also lead to a range of physical and emotional symptoms too, such as a common one is changes in appetite and changes in sleep patterns. Fatigue is often experienced, difficulty concentrating, and thoughts of sheer worthlessness, or even thoughts of death as well. So depression can so sadly and significantly impact a person's ability to function in daily life and also to maintain healthy relationships. Depression can be a very complex mental health problem, and its causes are often multifaceted and can vary from person to person. So I'd like to discuss maybe with you, Ian, some of the major causes of depression. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great, Wendy. Thank
you. Okay, thank you. So often factors such as genetic, biological, environmental, and psychological all can contribute to symptoms of depression. So, for example, genetic factors can play a part. Often people may have a family history of depression, and this might increase the risk. Genetic factors may also play a role in how individuals process emotions and also maybe handle stress, which can increase a person's vulnerability to depression. Brain chemistry and neurobiology are also factors. So, for example, imbalances in chemicals, common ones are imbalances in chemicals such as serotonin, dopamine, which are involved in mood regulation. That has been linked with depression as well. Another common cause are hormonal changes, such as fluctuations in women during stages of their time can trigger depression symptoms. Classic examples are hormonal changes during puberty, pregnancy, postpartum period after women have had their babies, and menopause can also increase susceptibility to depression. Another factor can be significant life events, such as the loss of a loved one. We were just speaking about that recently, weren't we, Ian? That can obviously trigger depression. People who have relationship problems common problem at the moment is financial challenges and difficulties. Also, work-related stresses and other life changes can all contribute to the onset of depression. So stresses that go on for a very long time, ongoing stress, can disrupt emotional well-being and trigger depressive episodes. Another example would be childhood adversity. Unfortunately, very sad traumatic experiences or adverse childhood events, such as, sadly, physical, emotional, or even sexual abuse. In addition to that, neglect, or growing up in somewhere where the individual feels unstable or the family is a bit dysfunctional. Those kinds of environments can also risk the possibility of depression later in life. So personality traits, classic examples are things like perfectionism. Self-criticism is a very common one as well. People perhaps a little bit more pessimists is another area. Also, chronic illness or pain. People who deal with chronic medical conditions day in, day out, or persistent physical pain can obviously take a toll on our mental well-being and contribute to symptoms of depression. Another common one is substance abuse. So people who are maybe struggling with issues related to alcohol or drugs, that can also be a effect, because it obviously drug use can disrupt the brain chemistry and exacerbate depressive symptoms. Another very common one at the moment is social isolation. So if people feel they have a lack of social support, or at the moment they're feeling lonely, that's another factor. And then biological vulnerability. So what I mean by that, some people just may have a disposition to depression due to their genetic makeup and how their brain and their body responds to stress. So those are the main contributing factors that cause depression, Ian.
That's really interesting, Wendy. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So what can we do if you maybe have a loved one who's suffering with depression? What should we do in a situation like that?
Okay, so there's various therapies that can really help with dealing with symptoms of depression. And I'm just going to go through three, just as an example of how it can work. So the one that is known the best is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short. And there's loads of evidence base to say that can really help dealing with depression. And CBT is based on the idea that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all interconnected. So how CBT can help you is it aims to identify and challenge negative thought patterns in depression and beliefs that are contributing factors. So one strategy that therapists will work with is to get individuals to reframe negative thoughts into more realistic and balanced ones. So if you change your thought patterns, people can then alter their emotional responses and behaviors, which leads to improved mood and functioning. And then another example of an evidence-based therapy that helps with depression is ACT, which stands for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. And how ACT works, it focuses on accepting uncomfortable thoughts and feelings rather than try to deny them, suppress them, avoid them, or even eliminate them. So ACT emphasizes the importance of developing committed actions aligned with what is important to the person's values, what is important to that person, and to actually focus on these values even in the presence of having difficult emotions. So ACT does what it calls, helps people to develop psychological flexibility and resilience, helping them to move forward despite maybe uncomfortable emotions or depressive symptoms. So it can actually help us to reduce the struggle we often have between negative thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, which often exacerbates depressing feelings, and focuses on the things that actually help us and focus on the things that are important to us, what we value. And the third therapy, which I think is really helpful in coping with depression, is called compassion focused therapy, and CFT for short. How this works is it's designed to help with feelings of shame, self-criticism, and low self-esteem, which are often very present in people who suffer from depression. And what I really like about this therapy is it encourages individuals to develop self-compassion and to treat themselves with the same kindness and understanding that they would offer to a friend or a person they dearly love. So simply by developing skills to develop self-compassion, individuals with depression can counteract the really harsh negative self-judgments that contribute to the symptoms. It also incorporates mindfulness techniques to help individuals become more aware of their thoughts and feelings, but without the judgment that comes with being very self-critical, which is often a symptom of depression.
It's fascinating, and we've done podcasts on acting compassion focused therapy previously, where you've talked about those things. So people want to go back and look at those, they can. Really interesting, Andy. Thank you so much for that. So I wonder whether there's almost a summary of top tips that people can use, really as a self-help type strategy that they can engage with.
Yes, certainly. Yes, absolutely, Ian. So I think my top tip is it's called behavioral activation, and this comes from cognitive behavior therapy. And what happens when a person is depressed, they often withdraw from people and situations that usually give them a sense of purpose, a sense of connection, and often a sense of pleasure. So one step is simply by gradually rebuilding up activities that do increase a sense of well-being and a sense of connecting with people, and that are aligned with the person's sense of a purpose and values. This may take time to build up, and the idea is to really work with very small, achievable goals. So once you achieve a goal and you celebrate it, this actually creates a natural feel-good factor, a natural endorphin high. And this is really, really positive. And then people start to notice a sense of success and well-being. They focus on what they've achieved and then they celebrate it. And this obviously helps them with their mood. So that would be my first tip. My second one is really looking at negative thought patterns. And CBT is very good at this. And it's actually noticing your thought patterns, noticing what you're saying to yourself. And so it's called cognitive distortions. And this is where people have irrational and very negative thought patterns that contribute to depressive symptoms. So people either think everything is wrong, nothing is going right, things are always bad for me, nothing is going to go right in the future, it's always me where things go wrong. And can you see, by thinking that way, just by using those as examples, the idea is to say, stop, hang on a minute, it's not always the case. Things don't always go wrong for me. It's not personally, I'm taking it personally, it's not necessarily personally. And actually just becoming aware of these conversations they're having in their heads, and actually just sort of like, stop, no, that's not true. Actually, there's other ways of looking at this. So you actually look at the evidence before to support this belief, and also the evidence to challenge it. And actually by learning to challenge the thoughts, that can actually help to improve their mood. Another one comes from ACT, and this is called psychological flexibility. And this emphasizes the concept that being open to experience the whole range of emotions that we have without necessarily trying to avoid or suppress them. So with depression, people often avoid situations that trigger negative emotions. So ACT encourages people to accept their emotions and their thoughts as simply natural responses. Okay. And by doing that, it actually stops suppressing the feelings, and actually they notice that the feelings actually do naturally go away. And then the other purpose of that is to take purposeful action aligned with their values. So an example, a very simple example, where there's lots of evidence to this, is simply by doing a little bit of exercise, just getting into the habit of doing a tiny bit of walking, or if you can't leave the house, some exercises in the home. Such a simple, small thing, but that could be along with the value of keeping good care of yourself, looking after your physical body, but it also can really help your mental health as well. So that would be an example of actually engaging activity which is important to your values. Another might be actually phoning a friend, somebody who you care about, who's important to you, and just having a chat or conversation. That will be another example of actually engaging in a meaningful activity. So I'd like to discuss one from compassion focused therapy. And this really talks about the self-critical, the very self-judgmental thoughts that people have. So here, what you're trying to do is not only you're challenging negative thoughts, you're actually trying to develop a kinder and understanding relationship with yourself. So there's lots of different self-compassion practices that people can learn to treat themselves with warmth and care that they would offer to a loved one. And this can actually help with common feelings such as shame, feelings of inadequacy and self-blame that actually add to symptoms of depression. So that could be simply getting your self-care better organized, trying to go to bed at a reasonable time, looking at your food and your drinking habits, trying to get those sort of small things right. Very good as a very simple way of actually helping your depression as well. Because when you're exhausted, when you're not nutritionally balanced, that can all add to that kind of disequilibrium that people often feel when they're depressed. So my next tip is to develop coping skills. So just practical things that you can actually do to help your symptoms. And there's loads of information now on relaxation techniques. They're very good, or learning stress management techniques. Problem solving skills is another one, and actually how to regulate your emotions. And actually taking more of a practical skill-based approach can really help people to feel that they're mastering their feelings rather than being run by their feelings. And that can be actually help people to feel good about themselves and feel in control again. And then my last tip, which is very in and very popular at the moment, is mindfulness. And why mindfulness is so important, that it really helps us to cultivate an awareness of what is going on right now, right here, right now, without judgment. So by simply getting very good at mindfulness, people just simply become more attuned to their thoughts, more aware of their thoughts, more aware of their feelings and bodily sensations. And by being in the present moment, this can really help with something called rumination, where people just sort of spend a lot of time going over and over and over, thinking about their negative thoughts and the negative situation as well. So mindfulness is really developing full focus on the present moment. And actually just noticing that you might have a thought or a feeling and just allowing it to pass. Is another skill in mindfulness. So it's loads and loads of research to say how mindfulness is really helpful to people with depression. Okay. And another thing just to say is that everybody is an individual, and it's very important that people find things that work for them and start to get these small successes, so that they really notice just a tiny little bit of success can really build them up and keep them going as well. So again, a practical one is going for a mindful walk. Is one of my favorite things, where you go for a walk, but you actually really take in the environment, you take in the weather, you take in what's around you, your surroundings as well, and you really notice any small changes. When you focus into them and look with curiosity and interest in anything different about the walk that you normally do. And so many people find something that simple could be really, really help them with depressive symptoms. So there's some examples there for you, Ian.
That's fascinating. Wendy, thank you so much for that. And really wonderful to know that there are so many different things that we can do to support somebody that's struggling with depression. So if people do want to find out more, people do want to get to better understand some of the things that are available to them, what should people be doing?
So if they want to contact me to find out any more information about what I do, how I can help people, you can do that by my website, which is called wendyc.team. So I'm very happy to have an informal conversation with people to see whether I'm someone who can meet their needs. And what about you, Ian? How can people get hold of you?
Yeah, so Hope Therapy and Counselling Services, we have a whole team of therapists and counsellors that work with depression, counsellors, cognitive behavioural therapists, people that work with compassion focused approaches or mindfulness based approaches. So there's a variety of things that we're able to support people with. People can just take a look at our website, so www.hopefulminds.co.uk. There's a range of different resources on there, infographics, blogs, as well as just the general sort of service listings as well. People can contact us for a completely free of charge chat, just to talk about what's most suitable that we can do to support them. So thank you so much for that, Wendy. That's a really fascinating exploration of what is a really awful condition, depression. But so wonderful to get an insight into some of the things that can be done to support people that are struggling with that. So thank you so much for that, and thank you to everybody for listening today. And we'll be back very shortly with our next podcast. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity with you again very shortly, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.